Howdy everybody, this is Omar, your audio amigo, here with the 12th episode of Thrifty Tunes. So today we're looking at an IEM that I bought because, well, let's be honest, I like the faceplate and it was on sale. This is the CVJ Night Elf. It was released in June of 2024 at a price of $30. I feel like CVJ as a company is kind of flying under the radar. If you look at their catalog, they have some pretty interesting looking IEMs, but you don't tend to see a lot of coverage for them. I grabbed the Night Elf because, like I said, on sale, not entirely because of the faceplates, maybe a little bit. But hey, is this all looks and no substance? Let's find out. So we'll get started by what's inside the cute little box. Inside, you'll find the IEMs themselves and this little round carry box. The threads on the screw tops don't feel particularly nice, but the inside is lined with soft material, so that's good. Inside this case, you will find the cable. You will find 3 sets of ear tips. You get small, medium, and large of these red cord silicone jobs. And you get a perfume sachet. This is now the second perfume unboxing that I've had. The smell on this is a bit more herby and incensey, if that makes sense, compared to the one on the Sonic Memory. But, you know, I like it. It makes the unboxing that tiny bit more premium feeling. Overall, the accessories aren't too bad. The metal carry case is nice, but I question its portability. It's a bit thick, and I would say the whole package is about above average for this price range. Let's move on to the cable. This is a pretty nice cable. It's a chunky 2-wire weave. Nice rubber coating on it. Feels nice in the hands. You've got a subtle CVJ branding on the 3.5mm connector there. This connector looks like it might unscrew and be modular, but it doesn't. The knurling on it, however, does match the knurling on the Y-split, so that's a nice bit of consistency there. The chin slider is what I would call semi-functional. As you can see here, it kind of slides around a bit. To get it to work, you have to push it right up close to your chin, otherwise it'll just, slide down. That said, it did shake loose on me 2 or 3 times while I was walking, even if I had it super up close to my chin, so keep that in mind if you're going to be buying these. But outside of that, this is a pretty nice cable. I don't see myself replacing it right away unless you want that functional chin slider. Moving on to build quality, CVJ has gone with a 3D printed resin shell with an aluminum top plate with the transfer paint artwork that you see here. One thing I'm going to say here is be very careful with these faceplates. The paint job is not the most durable. Most photos I've seen of these on places like HeadFi and Reddit already have the paint chipping or peeling off around the edges. I'll post a picture here. So yeah, be careful with the paint, but besides the fragility of the paint job, these actually feel pretty solid in the hands. The nozzles are fairly short and, kind of large-ish looking with metal filters on them. You get 3 vent holes. You get one up there close-ish to the nozzle, one sort of there off to the side, and a larger one down by the connector. They sort of increase in size. Because there's 3 of them, I had no issues with driver flex or pressure buildup. Bottom line on these, they feel solid. No real issues outside of the paint chipping, which, let's be real, if it does happen, it kind of ruins the entire aesthetic here. So let's pull up the specs. As I said, CVJ is doing interesting things. These are powered by 3 dynamic drivers in 3 different sizes. You've got 10mm, 8mm, and 6mm. The 10 and 6 are a dual unit. I'm not sure if they're true coaxial DDs or if they're sharing a coil or a magnet or something, but I'm going to assume that they're true independent coaxial dynamic drivers. The 8mm driver is off to the side and on its own physically. I don't know how or if they're crossed over or in what ways, but it's a pretty unique driver config at this price range. As I mentioned, the nozzle is short and wide, which could pose a problem for comfort. We'll talk about that later. And even though there's 3 drivers here, the overall impedance and sensitivity numbers mean you don't need an external amp to make these sound their best. It's always a nice thing when budget IEMs don't require more purchases. But now it's time for the cool wall. So here is where we see who is into the whole anime waifu aesthetic and who isn't. Personally speaking, I think she's pretty cute. I think she's small enough that you could wear these out in public and no one would really notice her in your ears. This aesthetic is immediately going to divide the customer base. and there's going to be a huge percentage of people who won't buy this no matter how good it sounds just because of these faceplates. Then again, the opposite is also true. There are probably a bunch of people out there who are looking at these faceplates and going, yeah, I'm going to buy these, I don't care what they sound like. Fair. That being said, I'm in the I like this camp, so I'm going to put these in cool because to me, personally, they're cool. I know it's probably not the coolest thing to you, and I'm sure we'll find that out by asking the Council of Ladies. I'm fairly certain they'll disagree with me here, but let's find out. Yep, I knew it. We got a single yes, 3 no's, and a meh. So, not pretty. I mean, it makes sense. Only one of our ladies would compliment her friends if they saw him wearing these, so there's some hope out there. As for their thoughts, yeah, it makes perfect sense that they think this set would be polarizing. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Moving on to comfort. These shells are quite large. To give you a bit of context, everyone talks about the Truthier Nova and how it's infamous for having enormous shells. Well, here's the Truthier Nova, okay? And no matter how you slice it, okay, the nozzle is a bit longer. But in terms of overall shape, size, and thickness, the Night Elf is every bit as chonky as the Truthier Nova. So if you find the Truthier Nova uncomfortable, stay away from this one. As far as me personally goes, I have an enormous head and large ears, so these fit me just fine. They settle in neatly in my ear. I could definitely feel them more than smaller shells, so I wouldn't ever say that these disappear into my ears like other ones. But I could wear these for, 2-ish hours before I felt like my outer ear needed a break. On the other hand, I gave these to my wife. She took them to work, and she texted me like 5 minutes into the workday and said, they don't fit, all caps. So these absolutely failed the tiny ears test almost instantly. The super wide nozzles made them uncomfortable in her ear canals. The enormous shells looked comically large in her tiny little ears. So yeah, if you have smaller ears, stay away from the Night Elf. But let's go ahead and get into the sound. Disclaimer, I thought I would have some fun with this one. Since the only people who are going to be interested in these are into the waifu aesthetic, I'm going to do my usual review, but this is going to be the Oops All Anime Music edition. So if you know or recognize what anime or movie the songs I'm going to use are from, let me know down in the comments. But as usual, we'll kick things off with the bass. And right away, we're off on a pretty good foot. The mid bass is nicely boosted, pretty punchy. The bass drops in the chorus of Garnadelia's Error are nice and punchy. Like I said, good slam. They have good presence. Some of the lower frequency drops get a little soft. They lack in some of that rumble. I kind of wish the set had more sub bass to add that sort of tactile rumble that I personally really like. It would balance out the mid bass boost a bit more. As far as bass guitar and kick drums go, honestly, it feels like they're even more boosted than the lower bass drops. The kick drum and bass guitar in Skirt and Punpi's Odd Taxi are front and center in the replay. It gives the whole track a really nice heartbeat as they, do their thing with the rapping and the guitar. They do feel a little overpowering, the bass line and the kick drum do, in what is usually, in what is a pretty laid back track. It doesn't ruin the replay. It's just, it changes the feel a little bit. It's a very chill track, and the bass and the kick drum give it maybe a bit too much energy. Overall, though, the bass is a bit weird. Like I said, the sub bass and lower mid bass take a bit of a back seat to the kick drums and bass guitar and the upper mid bass. It'll suit some styles of music more than others, but yeah, overall, I wouldn't say not too bad. So bass was not too bad. Mid range, again, interesting. The boosted mid bass does impact the lower mids, but it's not as tonally jarring compared to other sets that have the mid bass boosted to the sort of crazy levels. It could be the crossover point is around here and we're hearing the 8mm driver rather than the 10mm driver. I personally thought that Masayuki Suzuki's Daddy Daddy Do sounded pretty good on this set. The bass guitar is prominent and, in my opinion, slightly too forward in the mix, but it's not so forward that it muddles the rest of the instruments too much. The vocals are the focus on this track, and Suzuki sounds rich, smooth, and suave just like he should. Bit of a spoiler for later, but Idy's backing vocals on this track also sound absolutely fantastic. She's placed just a tiny bit more forward in the mix than in other sets, and it really works with her voice playing off of his. Speaking of female vocals, Juna's Here is another really good showing. Like I just mentioned, female vocals in general are a tad bit more forward than on other sets. And while the acoustic guitar and the percussion on this track sound a little further back than I would like, this is overall a really good replay. As a whole, the mids are a little recessed, which is common in this price range, but the mid-bass boost helps smooth out and improve those male vocals, and the female vocals benefit from the recessed nature a bit as well. It's an interesting way of doing things. I think it kind of works for some things. So let's talk about that treble. The upper harmonics on female vocals are actually really good here. Angela's Tokumade is a masterclass in borderline operatic singing by Atsuko, and all of her vibrato and rapid tonal changes come across very well and very articulate. This set does female vocals very well. Percussion is a bit of a mixed bag. I feel like initial hits on cymbals and hi-hats are rendered okay, but the harmonics for most cymbals in terms of wash and decay, it's correct, but every once in a while you'll hit one where it decays a little bit quickly and maybe a little bit unevenly. I know this next example isn't strictly cymbals, but harmonics are harmonics and percussion is percussion. That being said, Akira Jimbo's performance in Set Them Free is a good example. I've heard these office supplies being played in this song a lot, and on this set, certain ones like the pencil case and the bottom of the bento box decay a little bit faster than I feel is strictly natural. I'll put a link to the live one-take recording of this drum session in the description of the video, so you can go check it out. It's really impressive. But overall, the treble here is actually, it's fine, it's good. It's not overly sparkly, it's not super fatiguing, it's mostly well executed with just some cymbals sounding a bit off. But overall, it's a solid upper range performance, if maybe a little lacking in detail. As far as technicalities go, because of that sub-bass, issue, there's a little bit of buzz missing from the two bass parts in the seatbelts' tank. This is a nitpick, but let's be real here. Technicalities are mostly about nitpicks, and I feel like there's a lack of bass string buzz here to make me happy. It isn't terrible, and like I keep saying, it doesn't ruin the overall experience of the replay. On the upper end of things, however, Masayoshi Oishi's Kimi Janaka Dame Mitai showcases some fantastic acoustic guitar detail with buzzy, ringing, almost bell-like strings, finger slides, and some extra fun details coming from a very quiet piano in the background. Upper end technicalities on this set are pretty good. I think that the 6mm dynamic driver is doing some good work. For stereo separation, I went with Fana's Love Supreme. The mastering on this track is pretty fantastic. You get the keyboard in the left ear, the guitar in the right, and then the vocals, brass, and percussion all sort of live in the middle. It's a really great mix on a really fun song, and it shows the stereo separation on this set is a pass. It's very good. As far as perceived 3D soundstage goes, there's enough energy in the treble to give some good depth and balance out that kind of crazy mid-bass boost. Joe Hisaishi's Kiki's delivery service is recorded really well, mastered excellently, and this set doesn't let it down in the soundstage department. It sounds like Joe's sitting behind you at the piano, and you're sort of sitting to the left middle of the string section. You've got the cellos and the bass to the right, the violins to the left, and the violas sound sort of around you, some to the left, some to the right. It's a really good replay here. Summing up, stereo separation, good. Perceived 3D soundstage, I would say, is about average for IEMs at this price range. Nothing bad at all. Okay, so time for some comparisons. To my ears, this set sounded like a slightly V-shaped IEM that's been warmed up. I went back and forth while I was listening for, several days whether I wanted to call this a warm neutral or a warm V-shaped set, but I ended up settling on warm V-shape because of that recession in the mids. In the $25 to $40 range, I only have two sets that sort of sound similar to this one. We'll start with the cheaper of the two. This is the Mouthful, aka the 7 Hz Sal Notes Cross Crinical 02 at $25. In my testing, these two sounded mostly similar. There's a few key differences, however. First off, the 02 has better sub-bass presentation than the Night Elf. You actually get a decent rumble from the low-end bass drops on this. Secondly, while the mid-bass here isn't as punchy, the mid-range is more natural and smooth sounding compared to the more recessed, vocal-focused approach on the Night Elf. Finally, while both of these have very nice treble presentations with good detail, The 02 has what I think is a slightly more correct sounding percussion treble to my ears. Again, they're both similar in detail, but I think the Night Elf is ahead here, probably because of that extra driver, but I can't say for certainty. It's quite close between these two. The Night Elf does have a much nicer cable, and it comes with a hard case, but the 02 is $5 less, and it goes on sale basically all the time. Next up, I've got another collab IEM. This time, it's Hawaii Bad Boy and BLON with their Z300 at $35. The Z300 is more straight up warm compared to, I would say this is a warmed up neutral, and this is a neutral V-shape. This is more like a straight up warm. The sub bass is much more satisfying on the Z300 than it is on the Night Elf. The mid bass is pretty close, but the Night Elf, still wins. The mid bass on this is still not quite as punchy as the Night Elf. In exchange, however, the mids are more filled in and, like I said, smooth compared to the Night Elf. You do lose treble energy on the Z300 compared to the Night Elf, but the treble here I think is just a tiny bit smoother and more natural sounding. The cables are about the same in terms of quality. I'd be happy with either one. And while I prefer the hard case that comes with the Night Elf, you could make a case that the little carry pouch that comes with the Z300 is actually more practical for everyday use. So, swings and roundabouts there. Overall, I find the 02 and the Z300 to be better balanced IEMs than the Night Elf. For plus or minus $5, you can get a sound very similar to this that works with more genres and more styles. Whereas I feel like the Night Elf works best when it's being used for vocals, especially female vocals. So, a bass-boosted set with slightly less treble energy than normal that works extremely well for female vocals. Where have I heard that before? Oh yeah, Tangzu Wan'Er, $20. So yeah, the biggest fly in the ointment for the Night Elf is the Tangzu Wan'Er at $20. It's $10 less, and even though the Night Elf has a nicer cable and a hard case, okay, the Wan'Er does everything the Night Elf does, including the vocal focus, like I said, for $10 less. And it has better sub-bass performance to boot. The Night Elf really only wins in terms of mid-bass slam, and it has maybe just a touch more overall detail in the treble, but the Wan'Er's more versatile thanks to that sub-bass performance. And, the Night Elf has better build quality than the 02 and the Wan'Er, thanks to the 3D printed shells and the aluminum plate. But if the paint job doesn't hold up, is it really gonna look better than the Wan'Er? The Wan'Er looks pretty fantastic. So, yeah, I mean, the Wan'Er kind of spoils the party a bit. And yeah. So, with that out of the way, it's time to put the Night Elf up on my Audio Amigo Arbitrary rating scale. I see this as working as sort of a specialist set, with the main area of expertise for this being how it handles male and female vocals, particularly female vocals. Outside of that, I find the lack of sub-bass here to be really annoying, especially considering how boosted the mid-bass is here. The paint job and the unique driver configuration are the main selling points for this set. Okay, it's the artwork and the drivers. You don't find many, if at all, that I know of, 3DD sets with waifus painted on the shells at this price range. But if the paint starts to chip off, and if the 3DDs struggle to, satisfy my craving for a deep sub-bass rumble, what are you left with? Especially considering, like I said, the Wan'Er exists. So, all of that being considered, I'm gonna put the Night Elf in the good tier. The tuning isn't terrible, it's not bad, it works. But like the Rose Technics Quiet C that it sits next to, it just doesn't compete with its peers all that well. The paint might hold up if you absolutely baby it, but it's really hard to recommend this as an only IEM or a long-term solution to someone. Speaking of recommendations, do I? Again, not really. If you want a good-looking, vocal-focused budget IEM, Tangzu Wan'Er. That's what we've been doing for a while. Maybe if this had a bit more sub-bass, you could make the argument that this is kind of like a more premium Wan'Er, nicer cable, hard case. That's assuming the paint doesn't chip. At the end of the day, I can really only recommend this IEM to people who really vibe with the Night Elf waifu. Uh, Maybe try coating the IEM in clear nail polish to protect the paint. That way, it has an extra layer between it and the impact. Maybe you can use EQ to boost the sub-bass response to a more satisfying level. There are ways to make this IEM work if you really have to have the waifu on the shells. But for most people, I'd say just grab the Wan'Er, save yourself the hassle, save yourself the potential heartbreak of having the paint chip on you. Well, that's going to wrap this one up. I have to admit, I'm a bit sad. I was really rooting for the Night Elf. Like I hinted at earlier, I kind of like CVJ as a company. They're trying weird things, and when you try weird things, you never know when something's going to work out. Didn't work out in this case, but maybe the next one will be a hit. I wanted to thank you all for being patient and sitting through what was an entire review consisting of anime music with an anime waifu. I really appreciate it. I feel like anime music is a very varied pool of music to draw from. You have everything from classical and rock to ska and bluegrass. You just have to know what series to look at. But yeah, that's it. I appreciate all your continued support. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been Omar with AudioAmigoReviews, and I will catch y'all next time.